What Really Happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, March 31st, 2021, the last day of the month here. We're going to be in April tomorrow, and we've got a lot to talk about, a lot of news happening. Nothing major, but a lot of nattering and gromishing going on, so we're going to be getting into that. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and as usual, we're going to do news for an hour, then we're going to open up the phone lines for people to call in with their comments, questions, opinions, and so forth. Interesting little development coming out of the aftermath of the protest at the Congress on January 6th, and it's now becoming apparent that most of the people who took part in that protest are unlikely to serve any jail time because the vast majority, certainly of the Trump supporters, the only thing they really have them for is trespassing, which is a very, very minor crime. And the FBI is very much looking only at the Trump supporters, and they're not looking at any of the others who were committing the acts of violence. So a little bit of good news for them. Now, Joe Biden has put former National Security Advisor Susan Rice in charge of directing hundreds of federal agencies and departments to expand mail-in voting to make it easier for Democrats to steal future elections. Now, Biden signed an executive order that put Rice, now the Assistant to the President for Domestic Policy, in charge of soliciting strategies from federal agencies to produce relevant information on expanded voter registration procedures. So they are trying to institutionalize the very fraud by which they stole power last November. They don't want to let go of it because they understand if they lose power, they're going to be in a great, great amount of trouble. Now, Senator Rick Scott of Florida is saying that Democrats want no restrictions on voter fraud. And look at the fierce reaction being directed toward Georgia for passing that law saying that, there have to be limits on absentee ballots. There has to be voter ID. We need to restore the integrity of the elections. And the Democrats don't want that. They're literally looking for a license to steal all future elections. And getting on to social media here, interesting little story. This is coming on out of Blacklisted News, where Congress is demanding the CEOs of big tech social media to censor the internet even more than they are doing now. Now, there was a House committee along with two subcommittees, and they basically demanded that they censor more political content from the platforms and vowing legislative retaliation if they fail to comply. Now, I wonder whose political content is going to be censored, and something tells me it won't be the Democratic side based on the performance of what we saw last year leading into the election. Meanwhile, Facebook and Instagram have declared Trump off limits. Now, President Trump had an interview with his daughter-in-law, Lara Trump, who's now working on Fox News, and he indicated that he is going to run for president in 2024. In fact, they're going to have a big rally in the very near future to really basically show off they still have the support to do that. And they did that video, and it was immediately blocked by Facebook and Instagram. Facebook is out there saying under no circumstances will Donald Trump's voice be allowed onto that platform, which, as far as I'm concerned, Facebook has become totally useless unless you're into things like, funny cat videos or something. Latvia is now blocking Russia Today's Russian language news service that was aimed at the country's Russian-speaking minority. Russia Today is accusing Riga of an attack on the free press. So the censorship is definitely coming down hard all over the world. Over at YouTube, they are still trying to protect Biden from more embarrassment. YouTube is hiding the dislikes on videos. Users are ruthlessly downvoting the president almost faster than YouTube can delete it. and YouTube is announcing they're going to hide how many dislikes a video has received because he's getting a lot of dislikes. Now, YouTube's rationale and excuse for doing this is they're saying that all of these dislikes are an organized campaign because, after all, ordinary Americans wouldn't have any reason whatsoever for disliking President Joe Biden, his fraudulency. So they're hiding all those campaigns. In fact, they've reached a point where YouTube is going to remove the dislike button completely. So you cannot express your disdain for the subject at hand. Over at MyPillow, Mike Lindell has launched his own TV hosting platform. It's called LindellTV.com, and he's putting up his videos there that have been banned from YouTube and Facebook and Twitter and the rest. So we're starting to see these new social media platforms come online. Trump is getting ready to do his as well. Let's talk about COVID-19. It is out there. Story coming on out of naturalnews.com. The government statistics coming from the CDC and the Vaccine Injury Database double the number of humans in the USA have literally died from the COVID-19 mRNA vaccines than all deaths for 10 years from all other vaccines combined. There is clearly a problem there where even the CDC is admitting this is an issue. So the vaccine has only been available for 3 months, yet already more than half the number of people who died at the World Trade Center buildings have already been mass murdered by the vaccine that's supposed to prevent infection or at least lessen the blow if you catch it. Okay, so death by vaccine here. Germany has hit the pause again on AstraZeneca after 31 more reports of the rare blood clots and 9 deaths. Now, AstraZeneca is out there mounting a huge public relation and advertising campaign saying that the vaccine is completely safe and you should have no doubts, and it's 100% effective. And like most bookkeepers, I distrust numbers that end in zeros or fives. Another story on the same topic, this one from, excuse me just a second, from sciencemag.org, talking about this rare clotting disorder may in fact impact the world's expectations for AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. They rushed these all through. They haven't been properly tested. They are being used under an emergency authorization. I saw a cute cartoon earlier in the day of 2 rats sitting in a cage, and one says, "Are you going to get the vaccine?" And the other rat says, "No, they haven't finished human testing yet." All righty. Now, Claire and I, when we got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, we did so because at that time there were no reports of adverse reactions. Unfortunately, that is no longer true. Over in Virginia, 74-year-old Richard Terrell got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. 4 days later, he started developing this severe reaction where his skin was burning, swelling, turning red, and actually started to peel off like a really, really bad sunburn. Over in North Carolina, a professor at North Carolina College basically taught at the Appalachian State University. She passed away just 24 hours after getting the Johnson & Johnson shot. Now, the local medical examiner actually said the vaccine was a significant contributor to her death, but I guarantee you, you will never see that in the final report or obituary, or if there is any media coverage of this death, they won't mention the vaccine at all, because it's all about the Benjamins here. And these pharmaceutical companies, they throw huge amounts of money at the news media in order to control their content. Meanwhile, the number regarding pregnant women who suffer a miscarriage after having the vaccine continues to increase. It is now up to 400. It has increased rather by 483% in just 7 weeks' time. And so it's net. They're trying to hide it, but at some point it's going to become too obvious that something went hideously wrong with this whole program. Meanwhile, we're seeing another article out of Natural News reminding us again that vitamin D deficiency seems to be a common factor in all COVID hospitalizations and death. Okay, so get out in the sun and get your vitamin D here. Now, Biden's COVID team is looking at a test and trace program that will divide American citizens into 3 color-coded categories that will dictate access to public spaces. This is just like China is doing with their social credit score. And it's another sign of using COVID to get us all used to the idea of living in a dictatorship. And we have another story. This one is coming out of Natural News, talking about how new super strains of COVID are emerging apparently in response to the vaccines. The super strains are mutating. They're mutating to be tolerant to the vaccines. And down in Brazil, they've got a coronavirus pandemic beginning to affect the younger people, who we were all told were less likely to get it than the older people. So that's changed as well. And this next story is probably going to upset a lot of people. You know those disposable blue face masks? Up in Canada, they have discovered they contain toxic materials that can destroy your lungs. Health Canada issued a warning regarding the SNN 200642 masks. They're made in China. They're distributed in Canada by a Quebec-based company called Metalifer. We don't know who distributes them here in the United States of America, but apparently they have a high content of graphene, which is a very strong, very thin material that's used in fabrication, but it can be inhaled and it's very harmful to lungs. It can cause long-term health problems, the way asbestos does. Story coming out again from Natural News. If lockdowns and masks really are necessary to protect lives, then why isn't everyone in Florida and Texas already dead? Because these 2 states have lifted all these restrictions. People aren't wearing masks there. They're not socially distancing, and they're not seeing high numbers of new cases. In fact, the states with the most vaccinations are setting the pace car, if you will, for the increase in infections. Speaking of Florida, dozens of people in Central Florida have contracted COVID-19 after being fully vaccinated. And they contracted the virus more than 14 days after their second shot. Now, the conventional wisdom, or the propaganda, if you will, is if you get the vaccination and you get COVID, well, then you really had COVID before you got the vaccine, so don't blame the vaccine. That's certainly the story they told my doctor, who came down with COVID-19 just 3 days after getting the shot. But the cases are popping up all around the country, including Central Florida. Over in Washington State, they have over 100 fully vaccinated people have come down with COVID-19. So let's see. The CDC and the World Health Organization admit that the vaccines will not prevent you from getting the illness. They will not prevent you from passing it on. They'll not prevent you from getting the illness. They supposedly will lower the symptoms. And now we're getting indications that the vaccines are actually triggering cases of COVID-19. Over in Wisconsin, a little bit of good news. Their Supreme Court has struck down the statewide mask mandate in a 4-3 ruling. And they basically struck down Governor Tony Evers' statewide mask mandate and said after receiving briefing on the requests, the court concluded that state of emergency proclaimed in Executive Order number 105 exceeded the governor's powers and is unlawful. So a little bit of happiness over there. And we're looking forward to next week, right after Easter. Our mask mandate here in Indiana goes away. So I'm looking to see what the lower half of all these people's faces look like, or even if they have lower halves of faces. I don't even know. I've got no way of knowing one way or the other. Meanwhile, Biden is very upset that people aren't wearing their ritualistic shame muzzles anymore, and he's calling on politicians and governors to maintain and reinstitute the mask mandates. I don't know how far he's going to get with that, because there's no evidence those masks really help anyway. And as that earlier story indicates, those cheap disposable blue ones may actually be causing more health problems than they solve. And another article, this gets back to what we were saying before. This is shtfplan.com. Even though 146 million COVID vaccine doses have been administered, the cases are still rising. Really good vaccine that you have out there. Over in Great Britain, a government minister went on television to urge the British subjects to call out others who are seen engaging in an odd way, that's a direct quote, in an odd way, that includes hugging their loved ones. Apparently, in Great Britain, hugging your loved ones is now considered odd behavior. And I don't think so. I'm a natural cuddler. I'm a reincarnated teddy bear myself. Meanwhile, Twitter has censored a famed epidemiologist, Martin Kulldorff, and we're seeing this as a continuation of a program where anything that is not in line with the official story of COVID-19 gets blocked from publication. Now, a lot of people, and I am one of them, when we're dealing with medical issues or when the doctor prescribes new medication, we go on out on the search engines to do a little bit of research. And my doctor says that's okay. They want the patients to be as involved in their health care as the doctors are, even if I come on in and tell the doctor you're wrong occasionally. But according to this story that came on out of Science Focus, they're saying that there's a new study saying that, yeah, doing a web search on symptoms, it can actually be good for you because, first of all, it can tell you that if your worst fear diagnosis is not true, and it'll put you on the right track so you can go to your doctor and say, this is what I think may be going on based on the online research. Now, one of the things I do is anytime I get a new medication from my doctor, the first thing I'll do is check for adverse effects and withdrawal symptoms online, because what is in that little computer in the doctor's office are all the positive things about the medication, and very few of the negative issues are there. You have to pull that little really tiny piece of paper out of the vaccine or out of the medication packaging and try and read that, which takes a microscope. And you know, I've discovered that some of the stuff the doctor wanted to give me really wasn't all that good, and I put my foot down and said absolutely not. Turning to the international news now, the Taliban leaders have been summoned to Peshawar in Pakistan for what is being called war planning. And the Afghan security forces say they're fully prepared to crush any hostile move by the Taliban. Meanwhile, the Taliban apparently see that they've already won the war in Afghanistan. And this has been going on for 20 years. And the Taliban says things are effectively over. We just need to convince everybody to go on home and let us mind our own business. It's not going to happen. The Taliban are very much anti-drug, and when they were in charge in Afghanistan, they eradicated the opium poppy crops. And under U.S. occupation, the poppies are blooming and bumper crops and cheap heroin is flowing into the U.S. and Russia. Okay, we got to take a break for commercials, and we'll be right back. welcome back to our show here. And once again, I need to hold out my hand and request, beg, if you will, for your continued support of Republic Broadcasting Network so that we can continue doing the very important work that we are doing right now. Once again, the postal address where you can send a check, money order, or if you prefer anonymity cash, is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. The phone number where you can make a credit or debit card donation is 800-724-2719, extension 3. And if you mail in a donation of $100, you will get your choice of a spiffy official RBN t-shirt, there's mine right there, or an RBN coffee mug. And if you send in $115, you will get both. Please include your t-shirt size and your return address. And don't forget the front sight firearm deal. That promotion is still going on, and that is a really sweet deal. $500 for 2 Commander memberships, lifetime memberships there. All right, getting on back to the international news. Joe Biden is now begging the Taliban in Afghanistan to allow the United States to stay 6 more months. Now, yesterday we talked about how the Pentagon is actually going to lose a lot of money because of contractual obligations if the U.S. troops pull out by basically May 1st, which is what Trump said that they were going to do. So Biden is trying to get the Taliban to say, yes, you can stay 6 months. I don't think it's going to happen. I think the Taliban, I think all the people of Afghanistan are just sick and tired of American occupation. Getting on down to Israel, this article here, and this came out of Sputnik News, is talking about Netanyahu's obsession with Iran. He's always on about Iran and Iran this and Iran that. And they're asking, is this really a fear that he has? Or is he just using it as a political tool to try and build support among the Israeli people? Oh my goodness, the Iranians are coming for us. Please vote me back into power. The Iranians are coming from us. Please give us more money for weapons. The Iranians are coming for us. You know, please give us your children for the IDF. And I think it really is that second one, because we've seen exactly the same thing done in this country to build public support, to manufacture public support for various military adventurism around the world. Little bit of good news. A U.S. judge, Richard Leon, rejected a claim that the U.S. Campaign for Palestinian Rights is liable for militant attacks against Israelis because of its support for the boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement and Gaza's Great March of Return. So they just dismissed the lawsuit, trying to link the Palestinian Solidarity Group to terrorism. Okay. There's a new report out now. This one is being reported by AndyWar.com. And the State Department has released its annual report on global human rights practices, in which they reaffirm U.S. recognition of the Golan Heights as Israeli territory, which is going to be very upsetting to Syria and those Syrians who are living on that real estate right now. Over in Iran, there's a story here that came out of, just a second, AndyWar.com again. And the headline is a little misleading, because the headline reads, Iran rejects ending 20% enrichment for some sanctions relief. And what's actually going on is Iran will end 20% enrichment for all the sanctions to be lifted to go back to the agreement of the P5+1 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action Treaty. And they're saying that if the U.S. wants Iran to go back to the terms of the P5+1, then the United States must do so as well. And what the United States is doing is saying, end the 20% enrichment, and we'll lift a couple of sanctions here and there as we see fit. and Iran is not going to go for that. Meanwhile, President Hassan Rouhani has dismissed as lies U.S. claims it needs a few months to lift the anti-Iran sanctions and return to compliance with the 2015 nuclear deal. But Rouhani is saying the sanctions can be lifted in a single hour. And in this age of computerized financial systems, Rouhani is absolutely right. The U.S. is stalling for time, trying to get Iran to reduce their enrichment and then renege on the deal somewhere down the road. Meanwhile, the leaders of Russia, France, and Germany, who are also signatories to the P5+1 deal, they got together to discuss the deal and trying to figure out a way to get it back on track. Of course, the only real stick in the mud, if you will, for this deal to work is the United States of America. Still getting fallout from that deal between Iran and China. Oh, I got to take another break here. All right, we'll be back with more news after these few words. Welcome back to our show here, and we were talking about this Iran-China deal, which, as far as I can tell, seems to have taken the U.S. government a little bit by surprise. Apparently, they weren't ready for it to happen, and we're seeing the repercussions about this deal come on out. So we're looking at this article that came on out from Press TV, saying that this Iran-China deal is going to force the United States to have to rethink its foreign policy in the region and their foreign policy with China. Now, the Iran-China deal is primarily economic. It's intelligence sharing, which is annoying the heck out of Israel. It is not a true alliance, but I think we have to recognize the possibility that if the United States or Israel does attack Iran, it will be seen as a threat to China's economic interests, and China will be responding in some way. So they're going to have to rethink that. I think it's a major setback for the United States, to be very, very honest. Over in Myanmar, apparently ground troops are advancing. This is a major armed ethnic group, and they're trying to defend their territory from what they said were thousands of government troops advancing from all fronts, and urged the international community and neighbor Thailand to protect their people. Meanwhile, the United States has ordered the evacuation of all non-emergency diplomats and families from Myanmar, which may indicate that we are on the verge of yet another military intervention over there. Up in Ukraine, in the port of Odessa, a U.S. cargo ship has docked there carrying 350 tons of military equipment and vehicles for Ukraine's armed forces. And all of the equipment is expected to be unloaded by mid-Friday. The cargo ship is flying the American flag. It's a U.S. cargo ship. It's not Panama registered or anything. And apparently, among all the other military equipment, the ship carried 35 HMMWV military trucks, which are big, heavy duty vehicles there. Now, what's Ukraine going to do? Go into Crimea? I think that would be a mistake. I think Russia would feel they would have to respond, and we'd be into World War III. But according to this article over in Unz.com, the most likely target is a re-escalation of the war in Donbass. And Donbass, like Crimea, doesn't want to be part of a Ukraine that doesn't have a government representing the interests of the Ukrainian people. So they're definitely, it looks like something is going to happen there as well. Here a war, there a war, everywhere a war. Meanwhile, another article on the same topic, this from Zero Hedge. Biden's Ukrainian Putin push may lead to World War III. Now, Biden was in charge of much of the so-called Ukraine project during Obama's time in office. And recently, he's been saying some rather nasty things about Putin. Now, Russia state sources are alleging that Washington, under the Biden administration, is ramping up military aid to Ukraine. And they're talking about this cargo ship, the Ocean Glory, which is delivering this 350 tons of military equipment to Kiev. Down in Egypt, their president has issued a warning saying that the Nile water is untouchable, and this appears to be a reference to Ethiopia, which is currently building a giant dam on the Nile's main tributary, which in turn is threatening to reduce the amount of water flowing into Egypt itself. So there may be some tensions there as well. Story coming on out of informationliberation.com here, talking about the U.S. Navy's extremism training. And the liberal bias is there because pushing the Black Lives Matter movement at work on duty is okay, but you're not supposed to discuss, quote, politically partisan issues, end quote. For example, saying it's okay to be white could see you wind up in the brig or demoted. Story coming on out of responsible statecraft. They're talking about the New York Slimes, which back on the 12th published an editorial talking about the F-35 and describing it as the fighter jet that's too pricey to fail. So they're trying to defend the F-35 boondoggle. They're trying to keep it going. They're trying to keep all that money flowing out of your pocket and into the pockets of the defense contractors in various states across the country. And, you know, for more than 10 years, the F-35 has attracted negative reviews for bad design, runaway costs, an inability to show up in combat, unfavorable comparisons to other aircrafts, especially the ones it wants to replace, along with other problems. And they still can't get that fancy schmancy helmet to work and present accurate information to the pilots. Little bit of good news, and this one is coming out of the Hill. Congress is getting ready to basically try and rein in Biden's war powers. Now, if you will remember, under the Constitution, only the Congress can declare a war. But back during the Bush administration, Congress was arm-twisted into passing the authorization for the use of military force, which was basically a carte blanche for Bush to start wars all over the Middle East, and that same authorization has been used by subsequent administrations, including the current one. And Congress wants to reclaim its authority to decide when and where the United States goes to full-on war. Now, under the War Powers Act, the president can send military forces anywhere in the world for 30 days, after which he either gets a declaration from the Congress or he has to basically pull the troops back. Getting into the economic news, gold miners have recorded record high margins in 2020. Apparently, it was a good year for the gold industry. And I know there's a lot of TV shows about, you know, Bering Sea gold. And there was another one about they're up in Alaska and, you know, modern gold mining. But gold had a really good year, and part of the reason for that, of course, is the price of gold continues to skyrocket despite efforts to keep the price down to discourage people from closing their savings accounts, closing their brokerage accounts, and getting into precious metals. But the price of gold has now reached a point where it is once again profitable to be going on out there and digging for gold in mines that had been shut down because the unit cost of extraction had exceeded the value of the gold itself. Now, we've seen this disaster unfold in the Suez Canal, where a cargo ship owned by the Evergreen Shipping Line became wedged in the canal for a few days and caused a huge backlog in shipping traffic, which they're trying to get that sorted out right now. But over in Iran, they are proposing a Russia, Iran, India north-south trade corridor as an alternative to the Suez Canal. Okay, now, Republican states are pushing back against Biden's oil lease suspension, and we know there's been a huge pushback against his shutting down of the Keystone XL pipeline. So again, we're starting to see Biden is definitely not winning a lot of points either in Congress or with the American people. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is claiming that overworked Amazon staff are forced to defecate in bags in order to stay on schedule. She is joining other Democrats calling for Amazon to allow workers to form a union. Amazon, of course, does not want that to happen. And I think Amazon is going to start grabbing robots like that new one from Boston Dynamics. It's called the Stretch, and it is designed and built specifically to do warehouse work. And I think if Amazon starts buying those, that's going to tamp down on the calls to form a union. Joe Biden is scrapping plans to back Elizabeth Warren's wealth tax, while the Green New Deal cost will surpass $3 trillion with a T. Now, Biden wants to fund this, and Elizabeth Warren said, well, we need to tax, the ultra-rich, and Joe Biden is basically saying no. So once again, we see the President of the United States of America blocking taxes on the wealthy. So who's going to pay the $3 trillion for the Green New Deal? Well, look in the mirror. What can I tell you? Biden has announced a 7% corporate tax increase, or rather taking it from 7% to 28%. This is the largest jump since the 1990s, and he intends to target profits in tax havens to raise some of this funding needed for the climate-friendly infrastructure proposal. This, unfortunately, will have the effect of incentivizing a lot of these corporations to go to other countries, more tax-friendly areas. The bottom line problem is the government is taking and spending too much money from everybody. That's the problem. They keep us fighting each other, saying tax the rich versus tax the middle class versus tax the poor. We're all taxed way, way, way too much by a government that really has been unable to control their spending for decades. Up in New York, they have passed a bill legalizing recreational marijuana, which will be taxed, of course. Governor Cuomo has said prohibition has disproportionately targeted communities of color, and he may be right about that as well. They're actually looking at legalizing marijuana here in Indiana, and I'm mildly curious as to when that's going to happen. All right, talking about immigration and globalism, the Biden administration has finally allowed the media into the largest shelter for the migrant children, where 1 out of every 7 of these children has COVID. The tent structure they're being housed at is at 1,700% capacity, with 2,000 kids who've overstayed the 72-hour legal limit. And on top of it all, there is an outbreak of lice among all those kids. It's a terrible, terrible situation. And I know they shouldn't be here, and they'd probably be better off if they weren't here. But, Biden opened up those borders, and the people coming through are not being treated very well. He may actually be generating Republican voters rather than Democratic voters with this treatment. Okay. Down in Mexico, there is an unnamed individual. He's 47 years old. He's smuggled dozens of people into the United States in the SUV that crashed in California, killing 13. He has now been arrested again. He was turned in by a fellow people smuggler. So I guess it's getting to be a pretty cutthroat business down there. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is sounding off on the border crisis. Gives Biden a pass, of course, says the fault is imperialism, climate, and trade, and also says use of the word surge represents white supremacy, and we shouldn't be using that term at all. Down in Guatemala, they have declared an emergency. There is a new migrant caravan forming up to head to the United States of America. So Guatemalan President Alejandro Giammattei declared an emergency on Monday to basically deal with this huge crowd of people that are heading to the United States. Okay, we're going to try and fit in some science news. How people are interested in science, so am I, for a matter of fact. And SpaceX attempted their 4th test of the prototype Starship rocket, and the test appeared to go well. All 3 Raptor engines shut down in sequence prior to the aerodynamic freefall, but there was a problem at the last second. The prototype was unable to make a controlled landing and crashed, and it appears the problem is one of the 2 engines reignited during the landing attempt, and they're saying that was the cause of the problem. Interestingly enough, SpaceX, getting ready for the tourism trade, is adding a glass dome to the Crew Dragon that will give you a 360-degree view of space. It's basically a glass bubble. It is fitted into the hatch area in the nose of the craft, and you can stick your head up in there and just look all around and see the universe. And that will be a lot of fun. Story coming out of Gizmodo. They're talking about our second known interstellar visitor. The first one, of course, was Oumuamua. And this one is being described as a dirty snowball. Now, the object was named 2I Borisov. This is the second known interstellar visitor to our solar system. And they're saying they could tell it never previously got close to a star because of the effluents that are coming off of it. And they're saying it's basically a proto-comet, if you will. They're saying for every comet out there, there has to be a first time that it swings by a star. Now, I've been involved in science and everything. You know, even before I was in the movie business, I worked for NASA. And everyone was always talking about the 10th planet. Now, with Pluto having been demoted, now it's the 9th planet. And there is a story that came out of Science News for Students saying that indications of a hidden planet 9 in the solar system may be an illusion, according to a new study. And this is coming from Kevin Napier. He's a physicist at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and he says it's just not really convincing at this point. Well, that's one opinion. There's another opinion. This is coming out of the New Scientist, and it's saying there may be an ancient black hole out there at the edge of the solar system, and that this is the reason for the gravity perturbations of the inner planets. That's how we know something is out there, is because the planets don't follow exactly their predicted orbits. I mean, obviously the predictions are very accurate. We can put down spacecraft on Mars, but he's saying there may be a black hole out there. Me personally, I think it's a cold, dark remnant of our sun's binary partner. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking about the science news here. And up there on Mars, the Perseverance rover has basically unloaded the Ingenuity helicopter, unfolded it from its little storage bay on the underside of the rover, and now the rover is going to back away from it to give it a clear field for its takeoff and landing. And so we're apparently just days away from what will be the first powered flight on another world, and that is very exciting, and they're going to use that to get to places the rover itself cannot get to. And let's not forget there's another rover up there still doing its work, and that's Curiosity. And so we're going to see what's going on. Meanwhile, scientists have directly measured the core of Mars. This is from the InSight mission on Mars, and it's discovered the red planet's core is considerably larger than expected. NASA is beginning the final assembly of the spacecraft that is going to travel to the asteroid Psyche, and they're doing this out at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. They're going to be launching that out to the asteroid. Now, if memory serves me correct, Psyche is the one that is full of all kinds of very valuable minerals that corporations want to get their hands on. NASA is partnering with SpaceX, Blue Origin, and others to try and find water on the moon. And they're going to use the water as a foundation for rocket propellant, which would make it easier to get humans to Mars by stopping off at the moon first for a quick fill-up of the fuel tanks. And the issue of water on the moon has been contentious. And I remember when I was a kid, all those years ago, I actually won a science fair where I was studying objects called tektites, which I thought were splashed off of the moon to Earth. But Apollo had just finished, and the NASA was saying there was absolutely no water found in the lunar samples because, after all, everybody knew there couldn't be water. And I had discovered water inside the tektites. And so I said, we don't really have a conclusion. They can't have come from very far away, but they don't come from the moon. But I still won a small scholarship with that, and it helped me get my job at JPL as soon as I graduated high school. Years later, it came on out that NASA had found water in the Apollo moon samples, but just assumed it had to be a laboratory contaminant. And now, of course, they're saying, yeah, there actually is water. The regolith, the crystalline structure of the regolith, can hold the water against the vacuum of space. And now they're going to go up there and try and find if there's enough water to use as a reaction mass in rocket fuel. Okay, we're coming up here on the top of the hour. We're going to go ahead and open up the phone lines now. We've already got one call waiting. Area code 512-248-8252. And the music should be starting, and we'll be right back after station identification. And welcome back to our show, hour number 2. And we're going to take a phone call now. We've got, let's see, Jim in New York. Hello, Jim. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Oh, hi, Mike. This girl, 13-year-old girl, Lucia Bremer, was shot. Did you read that story?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
Virginia, by a black juvenile. And, you know, they talk a lot about gun control, but most of the gun crimes are done by blacks. And another one months ago, Ashley Anderson, a white girl and her father were murdered by a black because of fender bender.
Yeah.
That was totally blacked out by the media.
Yeah, I know. There's a clear bias there to not report on black crime and keep the focus on white crime.
Yeah. So it's blacked out. They're gonna, the next few months, they'll be putting on the fake George Floyd trial. I still think it was faked. I think it's a psyop.
Well, it's certainly been turned into one.
They both knew each other. They worked at the same club. So I think it's a psyop. It's fake. But there are real crimes by blacks against white people. And when they talk about Asian crimes against Asians, they're all by blacks. 90% are by blacks. And you're not allowed to talk about it. The TV quote blacks it out. But it's, you know, people, again, they still believe the television. And
not as much as they used to, or they wouldn't be bothering to, you know, have social media try and shut the independent media down.
That's true.
Yes.
Americans are waking up, but I think it's at too slow a rate. It's too slowly. I still work with a bunch of people and have relatives, and unfortunately, whatever the TV says, they just eat it up.
Well,
And
the reason for that is fear. They don't want to confront. They don't want to have to deal with what this country has become, and so it's like the good German in Nazi Germany. You know, they did what the government said, and they figured they would that no harm would come to them, which ultimately did not prove to be the case.
yes, you know, I was going to mention, these people. Some people that say, oh, this one's a troll.
Mm-hmm.
I think people use that word too loosely. I think having a different opinion from the majority is not being a troll. It's just you have a different opinion. I remember.
Yeah, but I mean, they're trying to criminalize that. I mean, they're pushing this idea that anybody who's into conspiracy theories, should be labeled as a domestic terrorist. Now, I'm an old-fashioned kind of guy. A terrorist is somebody who goes out and blows up a building or kills a lot of people for a political message. But simply saying I think that Vincent Foster was murdered does not make me a domestic terrorist. I will admit I'm annoying, irritating, and obnoxious, but I am not a terrorist.
Oh, no. I mean, even on your show,
yes.
on RBN, I remember the girl, I think her name was Karen, and she called the Mark from North Carolina a troll.
Yes.
I don't think he's a troll.
No.
I do think he's a cultural liberal, but that doesn't make him a troll.
No.
He just has a different opinion.
I think when people go on out and say this or that person is a troll, it's basically an admission they don't really have a substantive opposing argument.
Yes, I think the word troll is thrown around too loosely.
Yes. But there are trolls out there. There are shills out there. Yeah. I mean, there are public relations firms where all they do is hire people to load up radio show phone lines or to go on social media and push a particular agenda.
But how do you prove it? I mean, some people just have a different opinion. I think a lot of people like myself who was skeptical of Trump and critical of Trump have been called a troll.
Yes.
Because it went against the majority of pro-Trump callers to RBN, who I respect. But I've always been skeptical of Trump. I thought he's always been controlled opposition. He never would have got near that office if he was not controlled opposition. So even myself has been called a, quote, troll because I went against, I guess, the prevailing.
Well, I was very, very disappointed in Donald Trump on a lot of levels, but I think Joe Biden is the manufactured front person for the deep state.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Sure. But I think we have to be careful of throwing around troll. You know, it's hard to prove if someone's...
No, but, you know, when you get people pushing a certain idea and they don't want to debate the issue, they just want to keep on repeating things over and over again, whether it's immigration or Donald Trump, you know, or flying saucers, and they're just there to hear themselves. You know, they're not really contributing to the debate or discussion, and, you know, we hit the drop button on them.
Well, yeah, I don't like silencing people's free speech. I mean, if people, you know, that's why I thought RBN, that's what they're about, free speech. Let people, you know, I think liberals should be able to call RBN.
We have lots of liberals who call this show here, and if they're coming in with a point of view that they care to support with a reasoned argument, then yeah, they're going to get their airtime. But if they come on in to simply scream and shout at us, then no, we've got better things to do than that. And that's also true for conservatives as well.
Yes. Did you ever listen to Jimmy Dore?
On occasion, yes.
He has a weekly show.
Yes.
He's a, quote, liberal, but he's a real like progressive liberal, like a 1950s liberal,
Yes.
60s. And he's anti-war.
Mm-hmm.
He's for, and you know what? You listen to him and you agree. I mean, I considered myself conservative, but when you listen to Jimmy Dore, he makes a lot of great points.
Yes.
And, I think we have a lot that we can have in common with the so-called left.
Well, we've been talking about how the conservative movement appears to be splitting in two, and I think the same thing is true with liberalism, where you do have the, I hate to use the phrase, older liberals, like Jimmy Dore, who come from a time when liberalism was held in high regard, as opposed to the current crop of the ultra-left woke crowd, LGBTQ trans people, who I think are really not very good for the liberal agenda in general.
Yes, well, the liberals today, to me, they're fake liberals. All they talk about is racism and sexism.
Yes.
But they're economic fascists.
Yes, they
love
are.
their money, and they'll do anything to protect their money.
Mm-hmm.
They really, the racism, sexism, all that, it's garbage. But they're economic fascists. They're not liberals economically.
Okay.
They want all their money.
Yeah, they do. They want their free stuff.
They just use this racism, sexism, just to divert everyone.
They do.
But I'll let you go. One more. I just think we shouldn't throw around troll. I think people like Mark in North Carolina, I think he's a cultural liberal, but he's not a troll.
Well, he's in the queue. We're going to be hearing from him very, very soon, so you might want to stick around for that. Anyway.
He's troll, though. He just has a different opinion. And on that note, thank you very much, and have a great day.
Thank you very much for the call. We're going to switch over to Marco in Alabama. Thank you for waiting patiently. What's on your mind?
Hey, first and foremost, I make it known, everybody knows who calls me, or when I call in, that I told people that I was a paleo liberal, where I believed in small government, moderate change.
Well, I tell everybody I'm a paleo conservative, a paleocon.
Yeah. But long story short, I want to call in, dude, about Matt Gaetz, man.
Okay.
This is the thing that has bothered me, dude, about the Trump revolution, is that, when we were at rallies and we're starting to hear, dude, about all this inclusiveness, dude, with, gay people and all that stuff, when Republicans, dude, have never supported gay rights, dude, I don't know where this has come from, dude, because most Republicans and conservatives, dude, are Christians, and it goes against the Bible. And I just think, dude, that the Republican Party has been corrupted because, it's like we're letting these people in, and then all of a sudden, they get blackmailed by the deep state and all that stuff. I mean, the jury's still out on Matt Gaetz, but we already knew that he was gay, dude, so that was one of the problems, dude, first and foremost. And when you have these gay people, dude, that turn out, to have abused young boys, then you add the pedophile element into this. And we don't need this right now. We do not need this Gaetz right now. And then as it pertains to the whole George Floyd thing, I mean, basically, they're going to riot whether or not. I mean, they're probably not going to a murder, dude, because, that knee on the neck, dude, was textbook police academy stuff, dude. And so they're going to get him for, like, manslaughter. And because they didn't get murdered, dude, they're going to start rioting in Minneapolis again. We need to get out there and tell the people, we're like, hey, look, we need to put an end to all this rioting and all that stuff because you're really just destroying your own neighborhood.
Yes.
I mean, I have a brother, dude, who lives in Champlin, Minnesota, dude, and I go through, Minneapolis, St. Paul, dude, all the time, dude, when I go to visit him. And these people, they're just killing their own jobs.
They are. They're destroying their own neighborhood. Right after the Rodney King riots, there was a joke going around in Southern California, about how these riots were basically the black people emptying their own pockets of money and then setting their own hair on fire.
Exactly. I mean, I don't get to call in very much or anything like that anymore. But, you know, in the grand scheme of things, you know, the only reason why all this is happening to us, the COVID stuff, the passport, you know, the race riots, dude, all of this stuff, this is the invasion of America. What has happened to Europe 15 years ago is happening here. Instead of it being Muslims and migrants from sub-Saharan Africa, dude, it's our neighbors, dude, to the south coming over here. And they're blocking out, you know, everything, dude, as it pertains, dude, to race and identity of criminals and all that stuff, so that they can keep, dude, this narrative. White America needs to wake up and realize, dude, that we're being invaded because we are the ones, dude, that created, you know, this society in the grand scheme of things.
Yes.
And these people are just mad because they can't live within our society.
They don't want to live in our society. They want to bring their society with them. They want to turn America into something else.
I mean, exactly. I mean, what I'm saying is this, dude, is that, you know, it was Europeans, dude, who invented the Magna Carta, you know, over in Europe originally, came over here, dude, to escape religious persecution, and then created, you know, the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. If we're gone, you know, this doesn't exist. And these people have lived under, you know, dictatorships and tribalism, and they've never even been able to get anything other than, you know, a 2-story building erected and all that stuff, man. And I'm sorry, dude. You know, if you're not willing to defend your tribe, dude, then you're the enemy as far as I'm concerned. I'm out. Have a good one.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to go to Don in Arizona. Hello, Don. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, first, Mike, this guy that doesn't like the word troll. Well, and at the same time, he wants to have everybody to have free speech, except for somebody saying a word that he doesn't like. You know, so what? You know, this guy, he has no right to tell you how to run your radio station, radio program.
Okay, well, you know, I gave him a fair hearing, but I will run this show the way I feel the show should be run.
Here in Arizona, the Governor Ducey, who has earned the nickname Governor Douchebag, some people call him.
Okay.
He's a pretty good, for a rhino, he's not too bad. And finally, he did do away with the masks. What he said was the masks, before he made some kind of a gubernatorial proclamation that every county or city can do what they want to. They can prohibit masks if they want to. So, but then now he's saying they can't do that anymore. So, but our mayor here in Tucson, Arizona, still is saying she's trying to make brownie points with the Democratic Party, I guess, and she's saying we will ignore Ducey, but she has no legal authority to make people wear masks. She's only a mayor. The
That's
authority
true.
came from, as I understand it, I'm not a lawyer, but I understand what the very tenuous authority for masks, which was, there was never really law.
No, there's no actual legal basis for it. It's been a coercive recommendation, I guess is a good way to describe it, and that applies to the governor's level as well as the mayor's.
Yeah, it started with with Trump. Trump said every governor can do what they want. And that gave the authority, whatever authority there was, came from Trump originally. Then the governor,
that only applies if Trump had the authority to order American people to wear masks, and I don't think that's there.
that's what I mean. When I said
again, it was a coercive suggestion.
Yeah, well, we make believe that they somehow had the right. I agree with you. They have no right.
Nope.
To tell what to do? What the article of clothing to wear on your body? That's ridiculous. Then next they'll be saying you have to wear a cowboy hat or something. I mean, but anyway.
Well, they're going to have little colored bracelets in 3 colors that you're going to have to wear to have access to supermarkets and sports venues and things like that.
I don't know. They say that, but
yeah.
A lot of people have already said they're not going to take the vaccine. I mean, including soldiers and these groups like soldiers and health professionals. They say no way.
Yeah.
So a big percentage of the country is not interested in getting the jab. So I mean, they're going to try to keep you out of some stores. The stores are going to lose business, I guess, or there's another aspect. I mean, this is it's still up in the air as far as I'm concerned, because people are dropping dead from these jabs too.
Yes, they are. And like I said earlier in the program, Claire had to get the vaccine, or the nursing home where her mother is being kept would not let her visit. And when we were over there, we had to drive like an hour to find some place that had the Johnson & Johnson vaccine. And I never would have taken the mRNA. But we figured, at least at that time, it sounded like the Johnson & Johnson vaccine was relatively safe. Now, unfortunately, after the fact, we're learning that it's not entirely safe.
Right. But anyway, my gym. I can go. I told them when they started the masks, they said that you have to have a mask because this mayor of the Pima County and this Democratic machine, they tried to get tough with all these businesses, say you got to have a mask. And so
yeah.
Some of the businesses did cave, although they didn't have to, but they wanted to stay on the right side of the mayor.
Yes.
I guess. So, but now the gym that I used to belong to, they're saying you don't have to have a mask anymore, and they're saying we still recommend that you wear them. Well, good luck with that. Recommending.
Well, we got the same thing in Indiana. The official mandate from the governor expires on the 5th. They're suggesting we continue to wear the masks, but I'm not expecting to see anybody wear a mask at all. I want to see those lower half of the faces now. Anyway, Don, we're going to have to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. Right. We've got Mark in North Carolina is going to be on the phone right after the commercial break, and I'm sure his ears are already burning. We'll be right back. Welcome back to our show here. We're going to go back to the phones to Mark in North Carolina. And Mark, your ears must be burning. What's on your mind?
Yeah, well, this is what I really didn't want to talk about this, but, I just want to straighten something out. I am not a social liberal. I'm not a liberal of any kind. Okay? When I say I'm a kind of a libertarian on social issues, only up to a degree.
Mm-hmm.
Like people of different races want to marry, that's fine. Nothing wrong with it. People of different ethnic groups or religions, nothing wrong with it. Even if two men or women want to say they're married, as far as I'm concerned, whatever floats your boat. But don't expect me to accept it. I don't think it's normal. Okay, I think that's crazy. But as far as, for instance, cutting a child's private parts off, or filling them full of hormones. If it was up to me, any doctor that would do something like that to a child would be executed. Plain and simple. They'd be hung.
Or at the very least, lose their license to practice.
That's not enough. To me, to do something like that is so horrible. At least they should spend the rest of their lives in prison. And as far as the parents go who would do this to a child, let it happen. They need to be committed to a mental hospital. Okay, and the child should be, I guess, given to a good home or something.
Mm-hmm.
But any parent do something like that, to me, is not fit to be a parent. Now, so I am anything but a social liberal. I don't think, I think if you're born a man, you're born a woman, that is what you are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? There's no such thing to me as a transsexual. You, like I said, again, you're a man or you're a woman.
Yes.
Simple. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You can call yourself anything you want. That's, again, your business. But don't accept everybody accept it. And it crosses the line when you start allowing these horrible operations like that, or sex or hormone, pouring hormones into children. I don't even think it should be allowed, by the way, on a grown-up. If you're going to have your private parts cut off or have dangerous hormones put in you, there's something wrong with you. Okay, you need help.
Well, I would tend to agree with that part as well. But once you're an adult, again, live and let live. It's just I draw the line at children.
I do too, but even as an adult, I mean, for a doctor to do those type of things, I'm not saying necessarily to in effect, you're giving in to somebody's mental illness. That doctor should be held responsible for that. But anyway, what I really wanted to talk about, like I said, I'm anything but a liberal of any kind.
Okay.
I consider myself a populist. Some things I'm conservative on, some things I'm liberal on. And that's another thing I want to explain. you know what you were talking about before with Russia again, with Ukraine?
Yes.
I watch the Duran sometimes, and, you know, they're online. They're at the, you know, I don't know whether you know who they are, but they're really good. And they were saying the other day about Ukraine. They believe what the West wants to do, what the United States probably wants to do, NATO, they want them, the Russians, to probably incorporate the eastern part of Ukraine, or maybe even the whole Ukraine. There's nothing they can do about it. The West couldn't do a thing about it, because at least not as far as war goes. But this would give them an excuse to cut Russia off, you know, to, for instance, more sanctions and all that.
Yes.
They said that might have worked back in 2014 when Russia was not as economically strong. But right now, Russia has a very good, well-diversified economy.
Yes, they do.
Very close to China. They're very close to China and in Iran. There's a lot of trade going on, and they would be able to deal with it now. Europe needs Russia more than Russia really needs Europe, especially with that oil they've got, and plus food, too.
Yes.
And
GMO-free food.
Yeah, exactly, which I really applaud them for. Well, you know, they keep pouring this garbage on us, the GMO garbage. Now you're trying to turn us into GMO. So with these vaccines, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the GMO vaccine, and that's a shame. Unfortunately, one of my sons just got his first MRI. What's it? RMNA. I warned him not to do it. He did it anyway. I just pray to God that he'll be okay. Okay, so far seems to be so good, but
Mm-hmm.
there's no way I'm going to take that vaccine. Okay, no way. And I think before they try to force it on us, I think there will be a civil war. I don't think the American people are ready to take this garbage, you know?
Well, there is a lot of anger out there right now that I'm sensing, and I think that's the reason why the Biden administration is really trying to find some way to confiscate all the guns. They're not interested in stopping crime. Criminals will get the guns. It'll just become another item that's being smuggled across the border right alongside the drugs. I mean, seriously, can you imagine somebody with a plane full of cocaine in South America saying, well, I better not put this AR-15 in there or I'll really be in trouble? No, it'll just be a new business for the smugglers, and the criminals will steal however much it takes to buy the guns. And again, I'm using AR-15 because that's the government's favorite object of hate. But most crime is committed with these small, easily disposable Saturday night special handguns.
Well, thank God for people like Rick DeSantis of Florida.
Okay, Mark, I know you want to talk about Amazon, so I'm going to put you on hold, and we're going to come back after these few words. Welcome back to our show here. We're talking with Mark in North Carolina, and you wanted to say something about Amazon.
Yeah, I sure did, Mike. You know, as far as the robots go, what they're doing, I think if it was up to me, there'd be a law, plain and simple. We tell Amazon, no, you're not only Amazon, other corporations also, no, you're not going to use robots. We're going to outlaw it, period. We're going to outlaw the use of robots taking human beings' jobs. And if you move out of the country, anything you import back into the country, or anything you export back into the country, will tax it like 30%. Okay, that's one of the things I liked about Trump when he first ran. He warned about that too, but he never really lived up to that. That you know, you take your jobs to Mexico, and then you want to bring the product back in, we'll tax you. I think he said like 25%.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of stuff. That would stop this kind of stuff right there and then. And we take care of America's workers. Now, I know some of your callers would consider that a form of socialism. And if you want to consider it socialism, fine. I said I have no problem with socialism as long as it's a nationalist socialism. Again, like I said, not the type of, not going back to the 1930s. I mean it's real nationalist socialism, putting this country and its workers and its people first. Not the interest of big corporations. Okay, if you want to say that's not the free market, well, guess what? That's not free. Because personally, I'm kind of a hybrid when it comes to capitalism and socialism. I'm kind of a hybrid.
Yes.
Some things I like about both. I definitely like the free enterprise system. I like competition. Definitely a great thing. But when you let these corporations become predatory, when they become too big, they need to be broken up. or destroyed.
I agree.
Okay, and whether you deal with tax,
Starting with social media.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. That's the most dangerous thing right now. So these big drug companies, these big pharma companies, so the big banks, the other big financial institutions, and these chemical companies. These things need to be broken up and they need to be controlled. They are dangerous, they're predatory, and right now they own this country. You know why? Because they've bought and sold our leaders, our so-called leaders who are supposed to look out for the people, but look out for them. And if either the Democrats or the Republicans wanted to really do something for the workers like they pretend to do, they would tell at this point. I'm saying Amazon because Amazon is right now at ground zero.
Yes.
They would tell us, Amazon, you will not use robots. You will unionize. You will let your workers unionize, and you will treat them with respect, and you'll pay them decently, or else we will break you up into little pieces. Period. That's what I think the way to deal with them. Okay, that's if you had an honest government, but you don't. You have a government that's bought and paid for by these same corporations, Mike, and that's all I got to say. All right?
All right. Well, thank you very much, and we're going to switch over to Steve Elkins. Hello, Steve. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, one of your callers was talking about the George Floyd incident,
yes.
And I'd have to agree. There's so many red flags on that. I pointed out myself personally. The visual red flags that I saw, which pointed out to could possibly be a psyop, was the EMTs were not EMTs. They were not paramedics. When they arrived on the scene, they did not do or follow through with protocol that they've been taught. And I know protocol because I was an EMT before I ever went back to school to become a critical care RN. So I can tell you when they came on the scene, first thing you do is assess the area, safety. Of course, there were enough police there, didn't have to worry about that. But you actually get down to the level of the person that's on the ground there, and you do a thing called look, listen, and feel.
Yes.
And you put your face, your cheek against their mouth, and if you can feel them breathing, and of course you put a pulse ox, just check for saturation, what it is, check vital signs. There's a number of things you do that weren't done. They simply rolled him over, basically, put him on a gurney and took him, sweeped him up and took him off to the hospital, which I do believe everything about that thing was just, these are not EMTs, they're not paramedics. They didn't do any vital signs on the scene. They didn't put a blood pressure cuff on, and they didn't initiate CPR.
Yes.
If I'm on the scene, I've done this before. You're on the scene and somebody's not saturating and they're not breathing. You don't really pick up a pulse, or it's thready pulse. You initiate oxygen and where you can, and you put CPR. You do CPR, and none of that stuff was done. No portable oxygen tank came on. No initiation of CPR. Nothing that was, as far as emergency medical technician and paramedic protocol, was done. They swooped him up, took him, and if he was alive, they probably killed him, put a nightstick to his throat in the ambulance, and choked him. And he was dead on arrival.
Yes.
They certainly didn't follow protocol. And then the second part I wanted to add is the whole thing with the trial itself. Family was paid off $27 million about a week ago.
I know.
And so now you've got to find your jury pool, your jury, who doesn't read the paper, who doesn't watch TV, who's never watched the news, and doesn't know about the $27 million. How hard is that? I mean, we have a lot of stupid people, but, I mean, you have to have heard something about this case and this payout.
Well, one of the lawyers for the officer wanted to change a venue because of that news that got out.
Right. Yeah, so I don't know. Like I said, the PSYOP, they carry these things out. Like I said, those were not EMTs. They were not paramedics. And nobody's ever talked about that much. Nobody's ever really called it out. Why didn't they start CPR? Why didn't they put oxygen? Why didn't they do vital signs, blood pressure? Nothing was done. Nothing. Pick him up, put him on a gurney, take him to the hospital. Done.
Okay, well, Steve, let me ask you one question. Is there some means by which the EMTs would have looked at George just lying as he was and known he was already dead at that point?
No.
Okay.
Still can't. Because I tell you what, I've done codes on people for almost an hour, so on children even longer than that. and I've done CPR for the entire time. We usually do switch off, your turn, my turn, because CPR for 1 hour straight is nearly impossible.
Yes.
The rate you have to do it. Impossible, so we do a tag team type thing. No, you give every possible chance to bring back life when there is no life. Unless he was decapitated, totally different scenario. Yeah, we don't do anything at all. We get the scene, there's no head on the body. Yeah, it's pointless.
Yes.
But in this situation, they would have started CPR and continued CPR on the ground to the gurney, continue CPR inside the ambulance all the way there with oxygen, supplemental oxygen. They would have done all that stuff. They may even put IVs in the ER, not ER, but the ambulance. Put an IV in, get some normal saline and run it. Call into the doctor in the ER, said, hey, what do you want us to do? Well, pump some adrenaline, epinephrine. Give him some epinephrine. Medications we do to kind of get the heart going.
Yes.
And none of that was done. Just a guy dead. Kneel on him for 8 minutes, 9 minutes, neck, flip him over, put him on a gurney, take him to the hospital. That's it. It doesn't smell right. I mean, there's something very fishy there, and it's sad that nobody has ever come out and said anything about it. EMTs, have EMTs not watched this and paramedics not watched this and say, hey, wait a minute, what's wrong here with this picture? These EMTs and paramedics, supposedly, are not following protocol.
Okay.
These guys can't be real. They cannot be real medical people.
Let me ask you one more question, and then we need to get some other phone calls here. Steve, I don't remember one way or the other, was George Floyd's neck broken by the knee on the neck?
No, I understand it was not.
Okay.
And, of course, on the back of the neck, that's cervical vertebrae, and it wouldn't have even damaged his trachea itself.
Okay.
He would have not had a crushed trachea. So, of course, whoever controls the investigation controls the outcome. So if he had a crushed larynx, the trachea itself was crushed. And I believe, I'm thinking of the Epstein thing on that one. But, of course, that would be easy to find out. You'd have bruising, and you'd have you could see it separated. Your trachea is fractured. But again, who controls the investigation comes with the outcome that they want. And if this was truly a psyop, and it probably was, because
it certainly has become one now.
Yeah. Well, you can't explain that, and I would like somebody to explain that in the medical field, to say, an EMT or a paramedic to say, you know what, you're absolutely correct. You don't scoop and run. You actually do some work on the ground, and then you get them to the hospital. But you start, because it's essential. You get things rolling. You got to start getting oxygenation. You got to get a heartbeat. You've got to get a blood pressure to perfuse organs. And these guys just picked him up, turned him over, put him on a gurney, and took off. That's not how it's done.
Okay. Good point. You make a good point.
All right, Mike, have a good show.
All right, thanks a lot. We're going to go to Tom in Florida. Hello, Tom. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, that was very interesting, Michael.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, that was an Israeli tactic. The military Israeli tactic used that knee job. Yeah, I guess they taught it at the Minneapolis Police Department. But listen, Mike, I thought, today's Wednesday. I was going to ask you. I think I told you the other day about the Omega Man.
Yes.
Great movie. I wish you'd go watch it again, Mike, and actually see. I think they actually use it. The Omega Man. They must have. Some people must be sitting somewhere watching these old science fiction movies and getting all their cramming for their psyops they try to do.
Well, do you remember the 3 Days of the Condor? Where Redford's character, all he did is he read books to look for plot ideas for the CIA.
Exactly. Absolutely. There it was. 3 Days of the Condor. But listen, Mike, I'm going to tell you what's going on here in the Miami Herald. First off, the mask, the one-caller call from Arizona, the mask. Well, we have a thing called Mount Trashmore here in South Florida.
Yes.
It's almost as big as Mount Everest, actually. It seems like it. It's getting bigger by the day. And there's multiple millions of masks over there. They're not incinerating these masks. And I was thinking to myself, Mike, you know what? Let's talk about this. There's 1.5 billion people in China. What do they do with their masks? Do they incinerate them? Or do they have a giant mound where they just they turn them into methane fuel stations? What are they doing all the millions of masks and the germs that are flying around and all the birds flying all over the place, pooping and, eating the crap, and then the masks are mixing with the food, and the birds fly over and they dump, their bird crap. And then, then we got a bigger pandemic going on. I mean, this is like, I don't know what's going on here. This Wuhan holy hoax or whatever you want to call it. I mean, this is nuts to me. I mean, you know, Mike, 1968, we had the Hong Kong flu. Nobody went out of school. The kids, nobody wore masks. What the hell is going on here? Not all of a sudden, this is all, look, Mike, I'm going to tell you one thing. I want every one of your callers and you to listen to this. They took Donald Trump's golf tournament out of South Florida and moved it to Mexico. Why? Why? Because he was president of the United States? And by the way, so you guys know, I don't know if you play golf, Mike.
Not for a long time.
I don't know if any of the callers calling your show know what it is to be a scratch golfer. Do you have any idea what it takes to be a scratch golfer, Mike?
Well, you can't be very good.
I'm going to tell you what. A guy with a handicap of 16 is an excellent golfer.
Yes.
Donald Trump was carrying a handicap around 8 to 12. I think he's at 12, 14 now. At one time, Donald Trump had an 8 handicap. That's incredible to get to an 8 handicap. You have to be an animal on a golf course to break. If you can break a 90 on a golf course, on a long course, 18 holes, you know what? It takes a heck of a guy to break 90, Mike. Sometimes when I was younger, I could break 84, 87.
Okay, Tom, what point are you trying to make here with this?
The point I'm making is Donald Trump is no dummy. You got this bumbling Biden going out there with a brain aneurysm, thinking he's all this smart. People think, people all talking out Donald Trump is stupid. Donald Trump got medical conditions. Donald Trump, for 3 months that Donald Trump was president, when he took over the office from Osama, all we heard is how crazy Donald Trump was.
Yes.
Donald Trump has mental issues, mental problems, mental. This guy Biden haven't said a word. The mainstream media hasn't said a word about his mental condition. Okay?
Yes.
That's what I'm saying. You think this imbecile bubble in Biden could break 100 in golf? Do you, Mike? That's my point.
I have no idea. It depends on, how much he plays or if he plays at all. Like I said, I haven't played golf since I was a kid.
Okay, well, it's a tough game, Mike. It's not an easy game. You got to practice. There's a lot of practice. And
no,
dedication.
I know what it takes to be playing golf. It's just I had better things to do with my life.
Okay, I got you. But my point is, I understand that. But I guess what I was trying to say is the guy was he had a handicap, Trump, of scratch. But then I'm looking at, they took his beautiful golf course here in Miami, sitting idle for years now. They moved the main tournament here. It used to be the Ford Championship. Then they moved to all their other championships they had here. Now they moved it to Mexico, and there's a Mexico Open or some tournament, international Mexico tournament. And now Trump's out of office, and the course still sits idle. People play it. Of course, beautiful. The Doral course is beautiful, the Blue Monster, and it just sits idle because there's so much hatred for Donald Trump from the leftist, communist, Zionist media.
Okay,
it's disgraceful.
Tom.
It is utterly disgraceful, Mike. And Mike,
okay, Tom. I get your point. I concede the point there, but I have to let you go because we're getting short on time and we got a lot of callers waiting on the line. Thank you for the call. We're going to switch over to Jason in Tucson. Hello, Jason. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, thanks, Mike. Just real quick, since Steve called in, I have been totally telling everyone that those EMTs that showed up were not EMTs. They didn't do, my sister's a head nurse. I've been trained in CPR for my whole life, ex-military, all that stuff. They didn't do any life-saving procedures at all. And also, they're in tan uniforms with gun belts. They're basically sheriffs with their badges removed and then their emblems removed. So, but the thing I want to tell Steve, if he's listening, if he think they killed him in the or whatever, no. There's a few moments of them loading him up where they show he's got no legs. So the one business in Milwaukee that was burnt to the ground that got all the attention, the 20 employees lost and he was on leave, what that guy did is he makes a life-sized, or not life-sized, but lifelike human replicas for fire and police to practice on. There's a picture of him holding one of the top body size on a stand. It's literally George Floyd, people.
Okay.
So the whole thing is so set up.
That's a little eerie.
I really call it.
Yeah.
I know. It's freaky, man. Because they didn't, like I said, they have to do life-saving procedures. They have to put the blood pressure, the cuff. They have to do CPR. And they didn't do any of that.
Yes.
So anyway, the real point I was calling in for was the caller from a few times ago from Tucson about the mask stuff. I'm also in Tucson, I just a few hours ago got harassed by the manager at Safeway for not having a mask on because I've been going to that store for most of the time. The last few months haven't gone there a lot, but sometimes you just want to run in and grab some stuff and not be harassed. It was actually not the management or the staff that had been harassing me.
Yeah, well, around here, nobody harasses you about the masks. I mean, I walked into the supermarket the other day. I forgot to put my mask on. Nobody said anything. We're just all done with this thing. Anyway, listen, Jason, I got to let you go. We got to take a commercial break. We got callers waiting on the line. I'm going to try and get to all of you, and we'll be right back.
If there are candidates that are on the fence about being candidates, if they would be good candidates, good in elected office, but they're not convinced that they should file because they don't think they can handle it or they don't know whether they can handle it or not. We ought to have some kind of write-up about what each elected office is like, what it's got the authority to do, what the time commitment is, etc., what the duties are, etc., so that people will have an idea of what they're getting into and they'll know whether they can handle it or not, because I have a lot of difficulty finding people who are willing to file for office. And I am sympathetic to somebody saying to me that they don't want their life going to hell in a handbasket while they're in office.
Yeah, I hear that a lot too. I mean, it's been suggested I run for public office, and looking at the behavior of people at all levels of government, it's just not for me.
Oh, well, but I'm just saying that if there were an accurate write-up, from the smallest office up to the largest office, if there were an accurate write-up of what we were getting into, then we could get some more candidates out of that. But I don't want it to be on the League of Women Voters website. I want it to be on another website. And then, our well-intentioned candidates, could take it from there.
Okay, well, that's a really good idea, and thank you for the phone call. And we are going to switch to Al in Canada. Hello, Al. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, Mike. That what Steve was saying is very interesting.
Yes.
Very interesting. I never thought about it before because all you see is, what you think is police brutality. Some people see it as a race thing. I mean, there's all these different perspectives. Right?
Yes.
But I'm going to look into that. I sent you an address for a website. I'm not going to say the name of it, but they make luggage, right?
Yes.
It's very, very expensive. It's very high priced.
Yes.
And what I called you about was automation.
Yes.
That place, there's one of these places up here where I live. And I've been there, and I've worked on their machinery. And I'm going to tell you something. They have a couple of articulating arms, and like the robot, the Canadarm. The Canadarm.
Yeah, the one that flew on the shuttle.
Yeah. Well, they have that articulating arm at the end. Well, they have two of these, right? They're all over the place in the United States. Anyways, what they use this one for, this company, is to pick up sheets of aluminum off a stack, right? So they use suction cups, and all they do is they move it onto like this roller belt system in order to go through the laser cutter, right?
Yes.
So that's what they use these things for in this particular instance. Now you think of people doing that and how many cuts they would get. Right?
Well, it all depends. I mean, if they had handles with suction cups on them, like those safety handles you put in showers, they wouldn't get them. Now, don't get me wrong here. I really want people to have jobs so that they can go to the store and buy stuff. And I don't want to see American workers displaced by automation. I only made the comment that because of the presence and availability of the robots, the case for unionization is weaker.
Well, the only way they're going to be able to automate anything is if it's repetitive.
Yes.
And humans shouldn't be doing that anyways because we tend to break down with this repetitive motion. A malady that I'm one of them. I mean, this is you keep doing these things over and over again and stressing your joints in a certain way, shape, or form,
Yes.
it's going to wear in that way. It's very fascinating to even think about it. But anyways, so this company here, Mike, these things are a fortune.
Yes.
After that, after the laser cutting, like these, they go into this press that, you know, presses ribs into it. All those ribs are really is just to reinforce it.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It keeps it from actually bending, you know, like ductwork, right? They'll put those cross ribs in it to keep it from rattling.
Yes.
All that jazz. You get all these what's the word I'm looking for? They're not held up or held in by anything, so they can flap in the wind, sort of like a sail.
Yes.
Right. So you do this in order to reinforce it. So anyway, after that, everything is man-made. Everything is hand-done.
Okay, well, that's good.
If you actually look at these things, all the little rivets
Al, I hate to do this to you.
on these machines.
I hate to do this to you. We're really running out of time here, and I want to give Lauren in Ohio a chance to speak. What's on your mind? Lauren, are you there?
Oh, yeah, it just beat me on. Yeah, I'll go quickly. For that guy, the one that was talking about socialism and the good kind, and all, there's no such form of good socialism. It's ungodly. If a man doesn't work, nor shall he eat. If you need help, you go to the church for charity. But we don't get to put laws in place whereby the group demands the fruit of another man's labor into the kitty in order to exist peacefully. There's no difference between the mafia saying, hey, give me some money and maybe your place won't get burned down. You know what I mean?
Yeah, piece of the action.
There's no difference between the government saying it or the mafia saying it. It corrupts our existence here. Each one of us has the opportunity to grow and to build and to make something of ourselves.
All right, and Lauren, on that thought, I'm going to have to cut you off because we are at the end of the program now. Thank you very much. My apology to those people waiting on hold who did not get on the air. Please try and call in again tomorrow. Stay tuned for John Stedmiller. I'm sure he's got lots of interesting things to share with you. Spread the word of Republic Broadcasting. Spread the word of whatreallyhappened.com. Please donate. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.